These primitive tools date back 2.5 million years, but associated with Homo habilis not until about 2 million years ago, which isn't that strange, especially with habilis. They used tools that were in the area, rock that were in the area, fractured them in basic ways, used them and threw them away. It is the access to tools that gives them access to more meat that makes us think that that's what one of the things that grew brain size, that and climate change. And again, climate change would grow it because, in fact, you're now extrasomatic. You're adapting by how you understand the information, share it in your group, and then build the cultural elements that will sustain you. Traditional hominid phylogenies, so genetic relationships. On the left we see, and I remember this, Afarensis would have been the earliest, going off to, and that would be Australopithecus afarensis, Lucy, and her group. Paranthropus aethiopicus goes to the right, then you move up with Australopithecus africanus, Australopithecus cibita, and into the Homo species. Between those two, we have a branch off with Paranthropus robustus and Paranthropus boisei. On the right, we see something that is divided up more by geographic region. Afarensis, of course, is from East Africa. And then we see over to the right, Africanus and robustus, both from South Africa. Aethiopicus and boisei in the center, both from East Africa. And then the Homo species and Australopithecus gari would also be in East Africa. Characteristics of hominid species. This is something for you to look through just to get the idea of the time span. The ones that are in blue are not for sure, but insufficient evidence to really tell if they're hominids or not, apparently. So you can look that over if you'd like. I believe it has everything we're talking about. Fossils of humans. About 2 million years ago, beginning in the Pleistocene, differences from hominids, the early Homo fossils. They're taller. As opposed to 3.7, Homo habilis was in the 4-foot range. And then later on, as you'll see in the film, becoming human, the first humans, their brain gets up to 750 to 1,000. Heidelbergensis later is 1,200. So we're seeing the brain expand. And again, that's because the brain and how that brain is wired is essential now. At this point, it's becoming essential to adaptation. No sharp claws, no fast, strong animal that you can run and take down, a zebra or something like that. It's all about how you can figure things out and work together. And then it's in somewhere between Homo habilis and Homo erectus or ergaster, moving out of Africa and into Dmanisi is the earliest finds out of Africa now that are Homo fossils, the genus Homo. We'll talk about that in a sec. Early Homo fossils. Scholars agree that Homo fossils were found in Africa about 1.8 million years ago. Scholars disagree on how many species these fossils represent. As we're going to talk about in a second, in East Africa, about 2 million years ago, we have Homo habilis and Homo rudolfensis. Now the thing is, are these two, they lived in the same area at the same time? Are they a diversity within a certain genus, or are they two different species in the same genus? It's hard to tell. With these, because they're in the same area at the same time, the ability to migrate and mate, if they were even close enough related to mate, would have kept that being the same species. Later we'll talk about Homo ergaster in Africa and Homo erectus out of Africa. They're separated by 1 million years, so I could see them being definitely different species. But let's go back to Homo habilis. Early stone tools, 2.5 million years ago, old, are the oldest cultural evidence yet found. These tools are called Oldowan tools, Here's some examples of them. They may look like rocks to you, but you can see the symmetry in the flaking. Shows an enlarged brain case. Possible expansion of brain because environmental fluxes over 4,000 generations, over about 200,000 years. Yes, climate change has happened a lot on this planet. A lot. But it doesn't happen in 100 years like it's happening now. Thought to be a result of access to protein through meat consumption. Protein, of course, is about healing and development, and so that extra access to meat would have helped brain growth. The fact that they're using the brain to cooperate. Things like if you have stone tools, you can go out to a kill of a lion on the lion's left, and you can go out and cut away meat very quickly, or break open the bones of a skeleton that's left and take out the marrow very quickly and run back to the group. Or you can take a group of, say, 15 or 20 and begin to run and throw rocks at that lion. It'll scare the lion away, then you get down and you cut meat, and then you run away again. That way you don't become food, and then that's teamwork. And that's the extrasomatic, understanding to make tools, understanding to work together in unison, the betterment of the group. Suggest earlier hominins used tools that were not preserved in the fossil record, much like chimps today. Chimps and bonobos use the fishing wands. They use rocks and things, but these would not show that kind of use a million years later or more. Homo habilis. Here's a fossil on the right. The white part is what's been filled in. They know where to put the bone because we're symmetric. So if you have something on one side, then it should mirror the other side. Fossils of Homo habilis date from a little more than 2 million years ago to about 1.6 million years ago. They're found in 1964 was the first Homo habilis. East Africa, Olduvai Gorge. And that's where the Oldowan tools get their name, because they were found in the Olduvai Gorge. Homo rudolfensis. There is very little postcranial, like this picture here. Most of it's of the cranium. It actually has a slightly bigger cranium overall than Homo habilis, but rudolfensis has never been found in association with any stone tools yet. The material of Homo rudolfensis is from about 12 fossils with very little postcranial material found in East Africa and dating between 2.4 and 1.6 million years ago. Here again, here are some shots, or here's some examples of Oldowan tools, the earliest tools. Dmanisi, a Republic of Georgia. Dmanisi crania discovered in 1999 and 2001 and dated to about 1.7 million years. And this would be the earliest known Homo to leave Africa. It has a smaller brain case than Homo erectus, but quite a bit larger than Homo habilis. They are found in association with stone tools. The stone tools aren't quite up to Acheulean tools that we'll see in a second, so it's a very interesting find. The discovery of Dmanisi materials began in the early 1990s. The most informative species are four well-preserved crania. The most informative specimens are four well-preserved crania, with one recently discovered being the most complete of all. These remains are the best preserved hominids of this age found anywhere outside of Africa. They show a mixed pattern of characteristics, which some are quite unexpected. The average brain size is 750 to 800 cc's. So compared to chimps, habilis, or early Australopithecines, this is a much larger brain. There is that almost complete skull. Diversification of Homo. Diversification began 1.8 to 0.3 million years ago. That would be 300,000 years ago. Homo moved into new geographical regions, changed shape, got taller. As you'll see when they talk about Turkana in this film, we're going to see that I'll post for you this week. They demonstrated a wider and richer array of material culture. Homo erectus, Homo ergaster. This is the Turkana boy that's in the film. You can see the skeleton there on the right. Homo erectus material culture, Acheulean tools, because they're found first in Acheul, France, with a species called Heidelbergensis, later on than Erectus. But Erectus is using the same tools. Some Homo erectus were seen to construct shelters, controlled use of fire, and we have verification of that about 700,000 years ago in China at Homo erectus sites outside of Africa. There are those that think because Homo ergaster erectus lived on the ground that to avoid predation they would have had to have fires in Africa as well. To sustain the larger brain, and now we're getting up to 1,000 cc's, the calorie intake has to increase. Our brains take up about 25% of all the calories we take in. They're a very costly organ, but very much worth it. Because what we see now is signs of cooperation and within the group. East African Homo erectus. East African specimens have thinner cranial bones than those found in Asia. The one on the right is the East African. Some people have named this ergaster now. Some scientists argue that the African and Asian erectus finds should be classified as separate species. Ergaster in Africa and erectus out of Africa. And again, because of the distance, I could see this being the case. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. Acheulean tools. They were named after a site in France, actually made by Homo habilis or Homo heidelbergensis later on. Were more complex and diverse than older one tools. The main characteristic was bifacial flaking. You can see that in this picture up here, that flaking on both sides. Analysts indicate that some of the tools were used to process meat and hides. Show up in many, but not all, Homo erectus sites from southern Africa and the British Islands, which could be called Heidelbergensis at that point. So far, they have been uncovered at only one Homo erectus site in East or Southeast Asia. But the rest of the places we find Homo erectus in Asia don't have these stone tools, which is interesting. It's been speculated that possibly they used bamboo or some other kind of material. Homo erectus materials. Again, you can see the difference between the older one tools here. You may need to go back and check it out, but you can, while the old one tools, you could miss it and say, that just happened, coming down a mountain. But with these, they're very purposeful. These are the Acheulean hand axes. They are bifacial. They've been worked on both sides. And you can tell that this is done intentionally. This is planning ahead. The other difference between Oldowan and Homo habilis and Acheulean and Homo erectus or ergaster is that Homo erectus and ergaster, they chose specific materials that flaked better. If you'd like to go to this site, this talks about the correlation between brain and activities left on the planet. An archaeologist pointed this out to me a while back. That they look at the tools left in the ground, and then they also look at the cranium, and they see the kind of changes that have happened in the cranium and the skull, what areas of the brain are growing, things like that.